Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm continuing my Overwatch channel here in this video with a bit of a different one. So previously I've started talking about Overwatch news, or Overwatch League news, and I also talked about a tournament that happened, but now we're going to be talking about something a bit different. I'm going to be talking about a team specifically and quite in depth. It's a bit of a team preview, but I'm not sure if I'll do a whole series on it because there's 20 teams. It's quite a lot of content to be doing. If this video does well, I probably will. If you guys want to see it, comment down below if you want to see it. But today we're going to be talking about the Seoul Dynasty. And I've chosen to talk about this team because I have an opinion about this team that not many other people hold, but I really think they should. And I think these guys are going to impress us next year. I think they are being severely underrated when people have them in the bottom half of APAC, you know. Also, people having Philadelphia higher than them, excluding the Rascal pick. I think when Philly has Rascal, you can have the conversation about Seoul or Philly being better. But I think without Rascal, I think Seoul absolutely dominates them. I think they're better than... I think Seoul's going to be better than Hangzhou. I think they're going to be better than Chengdu. Valiant, probably. New York. I don't understand how people have these guys in the bottom half, honestly. Now, last year, this team was very inconsistent. I won't deny that. You know, they started the season off well. They got a couple of wins, I think, in their first week. We were getting hope for them. And then they just flopped. They just failed game after game after game. And people were thinking, what's happening? These guys are Bedosin, Gesture, and Prophet. Beasts from the London Spitfire. The winning Season 1 roster. Half of that core. And they are getting dominated. A double shield meta. Marvel on Sigma and Gesture on Orisa. These are two of their best heroes. Why are they doing so poorly? And to be honest, we don't know why they did so poorly. During the double shield meta, they did still fail. And an obvious issue with this team is the fact they refuse to play Michelle for whatever reason. But you wouldn't have been playing Michelle in those metas anyway. It's more obvious what the issue was when it comes to a meta involving D.Va or Zarya, and you have Marvel playing the D.Va and Zarya. Then you know what the issue is. You know that Michelle isn't playing for some reason, and he really should be. But in the double shield metas, we really should have been seeing these guys perform so well, and they just didn't. They got wins here and there, they would beat a big team, and then they'd get rolled by a small one. And then the main melee rolls around. So this was the first tournament in Season 3 of Overwatch League. And Seoul Dynasty almost won it. Yeah. In APAC, they almost went through the entire bracket and won the thing. They did get reverse swept in the grand finals by Shanghai Dragons. But they were so close to making it. And you really have to give them props for that. And that's where this idea for the Seoul Dynasty comes from. The playoff Seoul Dynasty. The playoff Prophet. You know. The playoff Gesture. Now, this playoff... This mentality where some players on the team just play better at playoffs has been around since Season 1 of Overwatch League. Even before that in Apex. With Prophet. Specifically. And from what we see, it's definitely true. They do... Not just Prophet. The entire team ups their game during playoffs. I don't know what it is. It's just magic. It just happens, you know. And going into Season 4, it's made of tournaments. It's made of playoffs. So underrating these guys, acknowledging the fact they play really well during a tournament format or a playoff format, and then having them low down is so counterintuitive considering Season 4 is tournaments. These guys are always going to be putting up a fight, if not winning it. These guys are always going to be playing at peak performance. Doesn't really make sense to me. Now let's go through the roster, because this team does have so much sheer talent. You know, you've got Prophet, fits, great DPS line, Prophet, so flexible, fits, an incredibly stable hit scan. Then you've got 2U. I will go over these guys in more detail once I've read out the whole roster, but 2U is an important one, let's keep that in mind. You got Gesture, Marvel, Creative, and then you got the two new additions, Animo and Sabiolbi. So let's start with Prophet. Well, keeping with this playoff mentality, this tournament mentality, where they just up their game, Profit is at the forefront of that. Profit always does well, regular season or tournament. He's always doing well. In the playoffs, he can just put the team on his back if he needs to. He can win fights back to back to back. He can get his ult in 10 seconds. This guy is a beast, and it's really good to see they haven't let him go. Now Tuyu. Tuyu is an important one, because they've got rid of Michelle after not utilising him pretty much whatsoever last year. We saw Tuyu come in on a two-way contract for a little bit with the Seoul Dynasty, and he looked good. In a meta where you have an off-tank, he looked better than Marvel playing the off-tank, which is important. It's an improvement, and not only that, I do think Tuyu didn't just look better than Marvel. He looked like a very solid tank player. Honestly, he did perform. He reached my expectations, which were very low, but he did hit them and strive past them. It's good that we have him, but the big factor is going to be seeing next year if Seoul actually uses him. We saw in the Nexus Cup they used him, and they did extremely well in that, I must say, running Tuyu. So if Tuyu has all this practice with the team, gets solid with them, if he's getting the scrim time, we can assume that he is going to be playing in the actual league with them. Unlike Michelle did last year, where he was just not playing even in off-tank metas. So I think that's really good. They have patched their biggest hole there in their team, and you have to give them. You have to say they've made improvements for that. The biggest gap was their off-tank, and they've fixed that. Assuming that he does play next season, that's a very big issue fixed. Next, I want to talk about the flex support position, because we've seen Bedosin leave this team now. He retired from the league as a whole, and Creative is going to be playing full-time here, which I really do like. I think, other than off-tank, Bedosin was the biggest issue with this roster. You know, he didn't play in the playoffs. Creative was doing that, or for most of it at least. And when he did play, the team looked shambolic. The team looked like they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't look coordinated. You know, they didn't look well practiced. And that was only when Bedosin was in. So you have to think maybe there's a trend there. Also, Bedosin did seem really inconsistent. He would have highs, but he would have more lows, in my opinion. I think Creative is a good, solid, and stable flex support that this team needs to iron out the inconsistencies that these guys have. Alright, now let's talk about the new additions. Animo. They got rid of Toby, which is a big loss. Toby was, I believe, shot calling for this roster. Toby was a rock that this team was built around. Toby was a very crucial part of this roster for all 3 years that he was playing with them. And mechanically, he's up there. But, mechanically, Animo is higher, in my opinion. We saw this in the Nexus Cup. Animo did very well, and like Creative, he's another stable, solid player you can count on, which is really what this roster needed. This roster was all over the place last year, so they need this support line to be solid, stable. They don't need to make plays. You don't want to hear the casters saying their names, honestly, because they just need to be the solid rock coming in, replacing Toby, which is going to be a task for them, but I think they can do it from what we've seen so far. Now, Sabiolbi. Sabiolbi is an interesting one. He is no Profit. He's no Fitz even. He's not going to be playing hitscan for this roster unless it's double hitscan or a Sombra Tracer type deal. If you see Sabiolbi playing, it's not going to be the best meta for Seoul. You want to always see Profit and Fitz be playing. That's what I think. Profit is a better Tracer. You know, Fitz is a better Sombra. But if it comes to a meta where Profit's on the Genji and you need a Tracer player, then you're going to have Sabiolbi in. And when you see that, you can tell Seoul isn't going to be confident or comfortable. You want to see this roster always rocking Profit and Fitz. We saw SBB in both the open scrims with Washington and the Nexus Cup, which we shouldn't read into too much, but I'm still going to use it as it's the only information we have for Sebiolbi playing on this roster. And in the Nexus Cup, he just looked worse than Prophet. Whenever he played Tracer, they just did worse. Whenever Prophet played Tracer, they did better. The difference between them was Sebiolbi was solid. He was alright. He was reliable. Prophet was reliable and that little bit extra of clutch. Prophet had the factor that at any moment he could turn around the fight, which you don't just get with Sebiolbi, and I think playing against this team, Prophet is going to be the scariest thing. So if you see them rocking Sebiolbi, it gives the team they're playing against that extra bit of confidence, you know, we can beat these guys, they're not running Prophet, we can carry this, we can win this game. Now, going back to last year, let's talk about the actual playoff run they made. People have been calling this a lucky meta, which you have to agree with, you know. They didn't perform that well all year, unless it was in that first main Melee tournament, or stomping on some low-level teams. But you can't give that entire playoff run, you can't give them making it to the finals, the grand finals. You can't have them taking 2 maps in the very last game of the year, of the season, to a lucky meta. These guys still had to work for that. You know, Gesture didn't have the Roadhog in his back pocket. He had to learn the Roadhog, and he picked it up fast. They were playing that from the first playoff game. Their coaches had a great read on the meta because we saw Gesture playing Hog in that first playoff run, in that first section of the playoffs, and then also when they went internationally, they were still playing the Hog. The coaches did a great job in recognising how powerful Roadhog was in that meta. And Gesture still had to learn the Roadhog. He still had to get good at the Roadhog. He still had to be better at the Roadhog than some of these people that have been playing the Roadhog for ages, you know. Super picked it up as well, and there was a good duel there. They were evenly matched. Both of these guys had to pick up the Roadhog. And this shows the flexibility of the roster. They are going to play what they think is best, and they're going to flex onto it, whether this be what specifically their roster is best at, or what the meta is. They're going to play what they think they can beat teams on. And we saw in that Grand Finals run that trusting in the coaches paid off. Previously, the coaches had what an outsider looking in has recognised as terrible decisions, not running Michelle, running Marvel Gesture 24/7. But now, you've not got Michelle, you've got Tuyu, a great off-tanking. They should be running him. They've been running Michelle, they've been running Tuyu in both the open scrims with Washington and Nexus Cup. And that can only indicate that they've been practicing with this guy, they've been scrimming with this guy, they're going to be playing with this guy. I also think that the fact that they were better in playoffs than the regular season made people shocked at their playoff run. In the regular season, I've mentioned this so many times, they've been inconsistent, they've beat good teams, they've lost to terrible teams. But you look at the negatives, you see, these guys have lost to Chengdu, they must be terrible. And then you watch their playoffs, and people are shocked, and try to blame it on a lucky meta. And a percentage of their success was a lucky meta. But these guys weren't performing in the regular season, which makes people think they're bad. They were not bad any of that time. It was a few wrong coaching choices, which led to shattering this team. But then their coaches got together, you know. People learned what they needed to learn. People did what they needed to do. And at the end of the day, they made grand finals last year, and this year they've only made improvements. So how are you going to have them in bottom half of APAC? It doesn't make sense to me. To wrap up, on paper this team is excellent, you know. Prophet fits, great. Gesture Marvel, great. Tuyu, incredible. Animo, really good. Creative, solid, very solid. Sebiolbi, you know, he's there. What more can I say about him? You know, this year they've only made improvements, covering up all of their holes from last year. New off-tank. One solid flex support that they're going to be running all the time. He's going to get all the play time. Very solid. A foundation for this team to succeed next season. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, share. All the good stuff, you know. I'll link below my Twitch, maybe even my Discord if you want to join it. And thanks for watching all the way through. It means a lot to me. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.